What's up, Matt?
Yo. Living the dream.
You're in a different spot than I'm normally used to seeing you at. There you go. Now it looks familiar.
I didn't move that. I'm looking from the corner.
Let me just get one thing worked out here a little bit. So I think I'll introduce us. I think we're live. So I'll let Matt get set up here. Get all my good stuff set up.
If you want to talk lumber, one of the things I've got on the front page of the briefing was lumber is a leading indicator.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to talk about. This is pretty good. So everybody, welcome to Lunch with Lumbermen. Matt Lehman, Lehman's Lumber Guide, Ashley Bucket Materials Exchange, the B2B exchange matching buyers and sellers, creating transparency and hooking up people with buyers and sellers of lumber panels and OSB that would have never seen each other before. So we're streaming, Matt, on a whole bunch of different platforms now. LinkedIn. I got my hair cut.
So did I. I feel like I got skinned. I can almost see head through here.
I still had that hole in the back of my haircut, but it's nothing I can do about that. But I liked looking at your. I was talking to a buddy that used to work at Cargill and a couple other places, and he was telling me about this food shortage incoming. But I think that we can play that into lumber too. And it's funny, we've been talking about this for 2 years, and he's pretty spot on. He told me 2 years ago to stock up on all the seed oil I needed if I needed it. And I thought he was nuts, right?
Yeah.
And he calls me the other day and he tells me that anything with any kind of fruit additive, like most of our apple juice comes from China now in concentrate, right? And gets added. Gets added as sweetener. And then he told me about this baby food shortage now. I guess you can't get some certain. I guess so. I'm reading your thing. This food shortage is incoming. I always thought that was a conspiracy theory, right? But it looks like we've got a little bit of that on some different stuff, right?
I don't think anything's out of bounds these days. It seems like everything's a possibility.
Yeah. But let's talk about lumber, the economic leading indicator, and. I think you and I remember that from the 2004, 5, and 6 market. Lumber was really the first thing to roll over before housing even did, right? We were still moving up into completions in 2004 and 5 when all of a sudden lumber just took off, right?
Yeah.
To the downside.
And it really makes perfectly good sense because we talk about how housing is such a critical part of the GDP and the economy and all that kind of thing. And you think about when housing is going to accelerate in activity or decelerate, one or the other, lumber is going to be the first thing to feel it because other than digging a hole in the ground and pouring concrete, the next thing that happens is lumber. So that's where the signs are going to be.
Okay, so let's talk about that being a leading indicator. We had our show the other day with Matt Beamer and Greg, and we've talked about some stuff. The one thing. Yeah, the one thing that I noticed, Matt. So I'm walking home last night. A buddy of mine calls me and says, "Hey, everything that you hear about, I saw your show yesterday, and I know some people are saying rail freight is freeing up." And Riley said, "Hey, where are all these cars?" And I've seen some things published how rail freight is actually starting to ease up, but this person was telling me that's not the case and it's no better at mills. So I'm having a hard time justifying this, right? Are you in the know on any of this on rail cars? Have any of your users?
I think it's more of a permanent thing than it is a temporary thing.
That's what this guy was saying too.
This guy named Hunter Harrison that used to work for he's worked for the CP, the BN, the UP, the CSX, Norfolk Southern. He introduced a program called Precision Railroading. And the whole idea was to make the railroads more profitable by using fewer people, shorter trains, and making them faster. And so what they did is they got rid of a lot of people, but they also got rid of a lot of equipment. And it's the whole revolution. The whole industry got revolutionized to be profitable, and they are profitable, but it's at the expense of service, of customer service. And I don't think they're going to go back and change it because it's the whole purpose of the program was to make it profitable, and that's just,
Well, yeah,
that's working. Though you're not going to throw it out the window and all of a sudden go hire a bunch of people to get a bunch of cars and go back like it was before.
well, one of the problems is, and this guy was telling me, good buddy of mine, he was saying, look, at every time things get bad in rail freight, they just let people go, right? So nobody wants to go to work for the railroads right now, right? It's hard. And you had a bunch of people retire early years ago, didn't really get replaced. How many people want to go to work for a railroad doing that right now? It's hard.
But that's all part of that precision railroading plan. The whole idea was to scale back and shrink the working force and the size of the cars. I mean, the number of cars and engines are available, and that was part of the plan to do it. They're not going to go back now and say, well, now that we've got a little surge in supply, let's just go ahead and throw everything in the hopper and start all over again. Judy has
Judy just put something up there in British Columbia. The rail challenge is old, 100 years old. True, Judy. Tracks that need to be released. So many derailments, can't go slow enough. Huge problem. Yeah, no, good point. So I guess it's something we're just going to have to deal with, right? Yeah, replace, Judy. Thank you. And I kind of was walking back. I'm like, okay, because to me, at $1,000 a thousand, X amount above the cost of production, you would think instead of curtailing to manage rail, you would be going to the railroads and saying, hey, take care of this. But man, it sounds like lumber again is the last one in the pipeline to get the love, right?
I don't know when the last time I saw a train come through that had a car of lumber on it. They're all stacked full of containers, just hundreds and hundreds of containers. And it used to be you could sit on the side of the road and drink a beer and count how many cars of lumber come by. Now you count how many trains go by without a car of lumber on it.
That's true. All these double stack trains coming by with the Asian hieroglyphic writing on it.
That's right. Everything's tagged.
Yeah. So cool. Let's just real quick. I want to jump into something else, but let's at least go down to your 2x4 number 2 composite and take a look at it. And I think market wise, Matt, spruce is still pretty resilient, let's say, because of shipping problems. But southern pine, on the other hand, is starting to open up a bit after there was an attempted buy last few weeks, and I'm starting to see secondaries trying to move more wood, and that follow through didn't seem to happen like it was expected, right?
But you know what? It was we talked about this before. I didn't expect there was going to be much follow through to it because nothing has really changed with the treaters, and that's like we said before a couple of weeks ago or last week. 50% of the southern yellow pine goes to wood preservers, and there's just no excitement about it. People are. Have you seen there's a Expedia commercial now, and it says, "Are you gonna wake up one day and wish you'd bought more things, or seen more places?"
Yeah, I saw that. The other day.
So there goes the case goods business going out the door, and everybody's going to take a trip. But so that's the trend, the wave, the infatuation now is to be making memories and having regret, and then you can always go out and buy another lawnmower, which I just did last week.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, here's the pine. I mean, it turned up a little bit the last few weeks. What do you expect in there? Because I really think pine is one of those that's more of a true measure of what's going on. Because if you think about it, a pine mill can basically bring in more logs or less logs depending upon what they're doing. Most of the stuff ships within 200 miles of them. 50% of it goes to treaters. I think it can react a lot faster than mills that are producing wood 2,000 miles away from the consumption area, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. At least a couple of weeks ahead of time, yeah.
Yeah, any disruption in freight when you're 2,000 miles away is a bigger ripple in the pond compared to pine. So pine is kind of dealing with that less treating, less do-it-yourself business. At the same time, more CapEx spending over the last few years, which is increasing production and more mills coming on. So with that said, it still has some great costs relative to production, but it's starting to kind of get into some of its headwinds a little bit here. But would that be the correct way to put it? Even though you show potential move up into the week 20?
Well, keep in mind that doesn't show the move. That's a timing thing. That's influenced mainly because of the weighting of the average of those prices of the last couple of years. But we're talking about, and in my commentary I talk about I think the next miss on my 86% accuracy is 14% inaccuracy. I think the next miss is going to be at that week 21 high. I think that's going to come early. I think the market's going to turn down early. And the problem with that for everybody is going to be instead of getting overbought right now and going into the end of May, the market's going to be adequately bought. People are going to they're buying their spring fill-ins. They've got enough just to get by and hold on to what they think business is going to be like, but they're going to run out sooner. So that big dip you see down in there's on a longer term trend, there's between that week 21 and 30, what I can't see, 30, week 30, whatever that is right there. There's usually a little bump around the 4th of July weekend, which is just a midsummer fill-in. And I think there's a possibility that bump this summer could be a little bit stronger than normal because the market's going to be underbought. So we, instead of seeing that big uptrend and a big downtrend, I think we can see a lot choppier market between now and the fall, with kind of stuck in a range of maybe a couple of $100, $300 going up and down, back and forth.
Peter Follett had a comment up here. Trucking right now across the country isn't any better. It's a nightmare. Peter, we're actually noticing trucking is getting better across the United States.
Yeah, nobody. I don't have anybody complaining. Nobody's complaining about needing product, but it might be also because they've got so much they just don't need. They don't have the urgency. It may still be at the mill needing to ship, but the urgency to get it on their yards just isn't there.
No, I'm not sure where Peter's shipping to and from, because there are still some lanes that are tough, no doubt about it. But from what we noticed from a month ago, lanes that were, we were shipping some stuff from Buffalo to Utah, Arizona area that wanted $10,000 to $12,000, and now we're getting it down to $7,000, right? So we're noticing shipments, north to south getting better, and some other ones. Texas was tough coming out of ports a few months ago. That's still tough, I think. But in any case, from where we have come from, which was very tough getting freight booked, actually picked up when you tendered it to somebody, we're starting to see that at least lighten up a little bit.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, Peter, out of Arkansas, Mississippi to locations in Southeast, and that surely could be because we're having some problems going south back up north on a few things, but it seems to be lightening up. But I appreciate your input there. So,
but if you think about that, that's the south going to the southeast, so it's kind of like there's nothing much down there but a bunch of pine trees growing anyway. There's not a lot of metropolitan areas between Arkansas, Mississippi, and the southeast, which I guess Peter's talking about, probably like Atlanta, that kind of area right there. But that's just, it's not a popular lane for a lot of traffic to go on anyway. So it could be difficult to get people down that way.
Yeah, Matt. So let's switch a little bit and talk about. But it was funny when you mentioned Hunter Harrison. You and I were probably talking to the right guy because he mentioned that to me yesterday too.
Yeah, he's dead. He's dead now, so you can talk about him.
Yeah, no, but we were talking about the same guy that brought that up to me yesterday, who we kind of know.
Yeah.
You and I were talking about something a bit ago. We want to change up and talk about buyers out there that you deal a lot in your day-to-day interaction with lumber buyers, from professional ones at large chain yards that buy 100 to 200 trucks and cars a day, to people that run a truss plant and buy one truck every week. But and everybody in between. And I'll kind of let we kind of noticed a trend over the last few years, and I've noticed it also. I get feedback sometimes when I'm getting people on the platform and they have a bid on. I'm like, hey, where did you get that from? Well, I got it from my normal person because I'm afraid I didn't want to make them mad, or I I didn't want to shop it real hard. Is that kind of what we were talking about a little bit?
Yeah, we were talking about that. We started talking about was decision fatigue, and I just put a post on LinkedIn about it, and so over the past couple of years, it's just been so difficult to get product. It's easy when somebody says you make a phone call and somebody says yes, I can do that for you. It's need to go ahead and book it. I don't know how many times we heard back in probably 2020 when builders started this thing off and saying, don't worry about the price, just get me the lumber and whatever you got to pay for it. And that just it was a license to steal. People, and we were talking about when you and I were brokers back in the I was brokered before you were probably, but we used to sell carloads of spruce 2x4s with $4 a 1,000 on them, and the price of the product was anywhere from $200 to $300 a 1,000. We were happy to make $4 or $5. If you could make $10 on a car, you hit it out of the park. But so many brokers that I've talked to that over the last couple of years, because of the risk, the shortages, and the availability problems, the transportation problems, the whole circumstance, these guys are making 10 and 15% on a lot of these loads that are $1,500 cars. So you talk about that goes to $10 to $15,000 of profit on one carload of lumber, and like you were saying, there's a lot of guys made millions of bucks wholesale of lumber last year and last couple of years. It was a very unique circumstance, and I just want to caution everybody not to get caught into the euphoric or chaotic state that the market's been in the last couple of years and feel like you owe somebody because they helped you out a couple of times on something. But I mean, you still got to do your best about making your purchasing. And the big money in the lumber markets is made on the buy side. Everybody has sales, everybody has service, everybody's got a customer base. The only margin that you can really fiddle with is getting in and out of the market at the proper times. And if you don't shop your lumber enough, if you don't have enough choices, then you get stuck with somebody taking advantage of you. But if you get too many choices, and if you're trying to shop something for, about 15 inquiries, you get what's called decision fatigue or buyer fatigue, and it's exhausting. It's just physically, emotionally, mentally exhausting, and it causes you to let your guard down, and then go back to that few sources or one source and go, gosh, I'm just tired of chasing all this stuff. That is too much work. I'll just call my broker fellow buddy, and he'll take care of me. And a lot of buyers, if you're a lumber company owner or manager or whatever, your buyer can make or break you, and you just got to really make sure that your buyer stays incentivized to always be looking for the best deal for you and for the company, and not to get lazy and complacent.
Yeah, I thought. What term did you put on LinkedIn, Matt? What was the term that you?
Decision fatigue.
Decision fatigue. You should come up with some decision fatigue, some camouflage for your class.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, Matt Lehman's decision fatigues.
Just the letters all screwed up. Yeah, I might do that.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it's been a great market, and you could arguably say, since I've been alive, the last 2 years were the best market to be a lumber broker, and also to be a mill to make good money. But talking to guys, it was historically the back-to-back market, or the people in the middle, is about a 2 to 3% market, right? 2 to 3%. And you're right, when the prices went up and the credit risk and the price risk go up, people naturally add prices to it. So people were adding 10 to 15% to cars. So $110,000, $15,000 a car, and a lot of that was just pure back to back because they have the relationship with the mill, and they can do it. And people with fatigue don't want to go shop people because they don't want to be afraid they're going to the FOMO, the fear of missing out, right?
Yeah, and especially if their customers already told them it doesn't matter what the price is.
Yeah.
It just opens the door. We were talking earlier today, and you mentioned that the double, triple, quadruple wholesaling that you saw going on some of the paper trails that you got there. The shares exchange, just looking at stuff that just got flipped and flipped and flipped.
Yeah, well, so I've seen that in my life historically when markets get very volatile, but that's markets that go from 300 to 500, right? When they go from 300 to 1,700, and you go try to get a proof
Yeah.
of delivery. You try to get a bill of lading or proof of delivery, and you see it has like 6 other human beings or companies attached to it.
Yeah, that's a lot of money got made on that thing before somebody took delivery of it.
They all clipped a coupon on that, right? If you're at the end of that chain, it's a good reason to go, like Matt said, to not have the buyer fatigue and to do that extra rep to find it. And I know a lot of and maybe you can explain what you do and some of the classes that you set up that are going to help with that, Matt.
Well, I had a guy that I told the story all the last few weeks with the trust guy that said that the inspector told him that there was no wood around. But here's the biggest problem that I see that even with my members is I can give them content and I can give them context, but I can't make them pull the trigger. I can't give them the cojones to go out and pull the trigger. One guy said the other day, said this, so. All right, so you're saying I should go build an 8-week order file. How should I go tell the boss? What can I say to the boss to make him feel like that's the right thing to do? So there's a lot of buyers are in a tough spot. If the powers that be says we want to turn inventory as much as we can, and the buyer comes back and says, "Well, boss, it looks like we're getting ready to hit a little streak. I want to try to avoid buying at this place in the market. So my suggestion is we buy through that high and get ready to buy on the backside of the low, which means we have to build inventory." And a lot of people are scared to take those decisions or suggestions to the higher authorities and the powers that be and suggest that they make an inventory change or strategy change. And it's very, very costly for the company when the buyer sees something that is afraid to go to the brass about it. You got to go there and just plead the case, and I mean or you just rock back and you don't do it, and you go, well, I just keep doing it the same way I always have done it, which is keep the boss happy, and he won't know he's not making any money.
So it's interesting. You and I have talked to some of the same people over the last 2 years in this volatile market that didn't know anything about buying lumber, but were buying it. And you and I have asked them, so what are the 5 people you buy from? And they're like, oh, I only buy from one. It's a friend of mine down somewhere that really takes care of me. I'm like, yeah. Whenever I hear that, I'm like, oh man, okay.
Yeah.
And then you ask them what numbers they paid for something, and you're like, huh, right? But I know some of the people that you basically took during this and helped them find 2 or 3 other people. You brought some over to Materials, to the MX platform, where they only were shopping with one person before. That's not even shopping. That's
just fill in the blanks.
Yeah. So I think it's something that's interesting to talk about. I think one of the things that affects it too is we've had so many mergers and acquisitions that a lot of the buyers that you and I have historically through our whole business were owners of companies. So they had a little bit different incentive sometimes because they were the head chief and bottle washer, right? But they also bought lumber. Now it's somebody that their main job is don't run out of lumber and here's your budget, right? And maybe their incentives their incentives are more of, I don't want to run out of lumber and I've got this wide range I can buy in and I just want to do it instead of, but when you do it the way you're talking about, you can then go to your boss at the end of the year and be like, hey, look here was my budget, but I saved this much and got it here on time.
Right. And if from the owner's perspective, you've got to incentivize your buyer to make him want to do that or her want to do that, like rather than just doing it the easy way. Because if you say that you look at your P&L, you go, okay, we made money, we had a great year, but if you look and say, well, the volatility on lumber last year was $3,000, which means that the price of lumber changed either up or down $3,000 over the last 52 weeks. Again, that's a lot of price change. So how do we get any of that $3,000 worth of price volatility, or do we get bitten by that? So
yeah, one of my questions, I always see people do what they're incented to do and not do what they're not incented to do, right? It's human nature. So I know how the world I grew up in, brokerage and wholesaling, I know how we were compensated and are compensated. That's pretty easy. How are buyers? You deal with this a lot more than I do. How in order to change a habit, how
if you're not a broker, you're on a salary.
Yeah, and is there ever any incentive to buy better?
I don't think at that level, at just the lumber buyers level, if you're just in procurement of lumber, I don't think there is. I think they're probably paid well. I think I've heard lots of people in the last couple of years looking to find lumber buyers. And I said, are you prepared to spend 100 to 120,000 bucks on a lumber buyer? And they go, heavens no. Well, you're going to get what you pay for. You're going to get a guy that works part-time at Lowe's to come and be a lumber buyer. You get somebody that knows the market, and you can make so much more money being a lumber broker these days. Just taking the risk. I've always said that as a buyer, when I was a truss plant buyer, I wanted to have my mill direct was my first place that I looked for. The second place I looked for was wholesalers that outguessed me on the market, or that took a chance, or that just had they're willing to roll the dice, or just had a connection that beat me to a connection or something, and a wholesale distributor. And so office wholesalers kind of get a bad rap for being like the middle guy, and I think that trickles down from the mills not wanting to do business with brokers.
But they're the ones that take the risk a lot of times and actually have that
exactly. Yeah, and I think I think the industry, this is kind of off topic here, but I think the digital marketing, like what you guys are doing, is getting lumped in with office wholesalers as being the bad rap kind of people. But I mean, the office wholesalers keep the market fluid. They provide a big service, and
no doubt.
Materials exchange and the other, if there's any whatever else is out there, it needs to be identified as on the handling side. There's a wholesale distributors, retailers, contractor yards, treaters, truss manufacturers. There's digital exchange, and that needs to be a component by itself, because it doesn't need to be thought of poorly as a broker that's just trying to get in the middle of somebody's business.
No, I get it. I mean, really, we're the plumbing, right? At the end of the day, so 1,000 people can talk to 1,000 people that they physically couldn't do at the end of the day, right? And then we match them up. But yeah, no, I see the real pickle there, trying to get buyers to actually show or get a value out of buying better, and then going to their boss and saying, hey, look, I did this, and you should pay me for this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So like you kind of, this, why work harder for nothing? If you're the buyer and the boss says, just make sure I don't ride the lumber and keep me competitive to the price. I said, well, I got a guy that can do that. Yeah. I'll call my broker fella and he'll do it for me all the time. Just like, make sure you give me a number that, I'm within $40 of the mill. You're anytime that I need something, your number to me is random and 40. That's
so we'll keep talking about it in other shows. And as you bring more people into and you have more commentaries on it, I think that's a real interesting area to get explored, because as things do digitize and the demographics change and people come in that on the buyer level and actually start looking at more data and numbers, it's pretty easy to compare. Where I think people used to look at random lengths and how they bought against random lengths, right? I think that was always the historical norm in a lot of places.
Yeah, and if you figured you always bought their spruce at random plus something, your pine at random plus something, because of where you were geographically located to the mill.
Yeah.
And you just went up or down from that, $20 higher, $20 lower as the market moved up and down. But I think I think the challenge that you guys face is still, you guys can't, a digital market can't talk somebody into buying something. It's data driven. It's the numbers are there, and there's your price, and you can't hear a story about freight still being tough, can't get cars, labor this, and just fiber this, and all this kind of stuff. It's just a matter of like, here's what I'm looking for. Here's the period of time I'm got to have it shipped in. What's the price? At some point, it comes down to what's the best price, and all of your suppliers need to know that they don't have you captive, held hostage, and that you have the ability to keep them honest.
I agree, but what I'm seeing, especially in the last year, if you can go out, I consider you an influencer in the industry. Look at on LinkedIn and all that. You go out and you can, there is enough data saturated in the industry that if you're smart enough to sift through it and look at the records of everybody doing it on whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, whatever venue you like looking at, that information is out there to consume, right? You just have to figure out how to consume it. And, you know,
you got to know what you're going to do with it. You can sit here and collect numbers all day long, but what are you going to do? I mean, if you don't, you get at some point you have to pull the trigger. You got to have a plan of action and confidence about about what your plan of action is going to be. And
yeah, well, look at
that's kind of,
think about it. At the end of the day, the one reason you're leaning on a human being sometimes is because you're afraid to make the decision yourself, and you need you need that person in your ear to say yes. So when you walk out the door at night, you don't think you did something wrong because Bob.
Yeah, if somebody questions you, then you've got a story to tell.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So look at we're kind of. What do you think with everything going on in the world with rates, with all the financial data coming out, Elon Musk buying Twitter, everybody deciding to give people free college loans? How is that going to play out in housing? What are we seeing in housing right now?
It's the same thing as the very beginning. We talked about in January, 1.2 million, 1.5 million, 1.2 million, and 1.8 million.
Yeah.
I was over today right around Charlotte a little bit and look at this place that was a building supply for roofing products, vinyl siding, hardy board, that kind of stuff. They had so much crap on their yard that the bundles of things were falling over on each other. They had and last year it was all pavement. Now they got so much inventory, the supply side is just covered up and they can't even move around. I mean, bundles of hardy siding that they've fallen over. They're starting to get busted up. And I saw a job site right around the corner. There was a big apartment complex. They had trusses that were turning black on the job site, bundles of OSB that was falling over. There's just I think there was such a panic to get things because there's a fear of getting it. The industry just got sloppy with it.
Yeah.
And I think we've gone through a period of panic of trying to make sure you get enough of everything. And on the supply side, there's not a shortage of product. There may be a difficulty in getting the product to the market. There may be a fiber shortage or less fiber available from Canada that's going to reduce some of that supply coming back. And the whole European thing is our whole contention about Europe is Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah.
If that thing gets, it's not going to go on forever. It's going to get resolved, and when it does, that flow of European lumber is going to start coming back into the system again. And like you mentioned earlier about there's between now and the first half of 2023, there's going to be a buttload of southern yellow pine production coming on the market.
Yeah, and as Riley was saying the other day, he's not seeing any less
Euro wood
from Euro. Now look at if you're buying Baltic birch or something like that, or the do-it-yourself and cabinet stuff. Maybe one question yesterday somebody asked, and we weren't really equipped to answer it. And maybe this person's on what's going on with LVL. I still hear people asking me about that. Is that still a tight market? Have you heard much about it? Are your members?
I think, I remember I heard the question yesterday. I think a lot of it is multifamily. Multifamily is still as strong or stronger than single family is. There's just more
stronger. Yeah. Stronger.
Yeah. And there's more need for LVL for spans and the whole network of what. And do you think about it, like what does it take to have excess, an extra 2% or 5% or 20%? It's not likely a whole lot. It's just enough that when everybody's got a 2% shortage, and it just feels like you just can't you're always chasing it a little bit, but it's not like it's not available.
One interesting thing I wanted to bring up about pine. One of the guys on Twitter, I won't say his name because unless he lets me at this point, but he puts them out yesterday. Into Texas, he's buying 2x6, 104 and 5/8 studs, fire treated for multifamily, cheaper than he's buying just raw Doug fir 2x6, 104 and 5/8 from Pacific Northwest mills. That just shows you how that southern yellow pine U.S. or spruce spread just got so wide, right? Where pine is the go-to, and everybody said that they would never use pine in multifamily, are all buying pine now, right?
Yeah, I don't never say never in the lumber business because you got when you're the one making the decision about dragging a 2x10 up two ladder floors of flights of steps, it's no fun. But when you can buy the studs and everything like that, it's a whole different dynamic of when you have the other things available to say that you'll never do something, you can say that. But I remember there was a time back when I was trading that contractors would pay $100, $1,000 more for spruce to the southeast than they would for southern pine not to use it. But that's not the problem. It's not just the price; it's the product availability. You can wait on a carved Doug fir, white fir, whatever studs for 6 weeks, or you could go buy trucks, 8 or 10 trucks out of the mill of the south and get it treated and have it delivered within 2 weeks.
We were shipping, so a lot of people don't see. We were shipping a lot of 2x10, 2x12 European spruce, and we had all the ratings for it and all that, all the way back into the Midwest, into Kansas, into Iowa, into all kinds of places, because it was so much more inexpensive than getting it out of the Pacific Northwest or out of Canada. So a lot of people use that and some residential stuff. Steve Harms was saying LVL is still tight, long lead time, still building inventory. So, when you only have 2 producers of it, that's probably the result, right? Or I'm sure there's more than that, but and is Steve one of your guys, Matt? Is Steve?
No, Bubba will make him one of them.
All right,
Steve.
Well, look,
I'm gonna send him a jug of punch.
Yeah, there you go. And you're gonna send him your Matt Lehman fatigues, man.
Yeah, I might. I like the decision fatigues. I'm going to work on that.
Well, listen, everybody, thanks for coming to Lunch with Lumbermen with Matt Lehman. If you want it, Matt Lehman, laymansguide.com is there. Feel free to sign up with him. And we're at mxlumber.com. That's mxlumber.com. There's no cost to be on it. And like, as Matt said, we are the plumbing. We charge a flat fee if you buy something or sell something, but you can look at pricing for free. We want you to use it, but there's no reason why you can't come to mxlumber.com. We are also trending in the Apple Store with our new app. So come on.
I was going to say, when you say plumbing, the first thing that goes to your mind is what's running through it. So I like Jory's comment is conduit, not plumbing.
Well, my brother-in-law is a plumber, and he said the first rule of plumbing is always make sure the stuff goes downhill.
That's exactly right.
All right, everybody, have a great week.
Thank you, guys.
Sounds good. Thank you. Bye.
See you.